Kingfisher, as an oil field, is operated by CNOOC Uganda Limited on behalf of joint ventures. And so Kingfisher Development Area is operated by CNOOC Uganda Limited. Oil resources are finite. What that basically means that they are depletable. So with time, as we produce them, it gets depleted. This particular place was chosen because, as we know it from our basic geography, there is something we call, health movement that creates what we call a graben and a host block. I talked about the source rock, and you know the way the Albertine ground, we are in the border. When the British came and when they were leaving, at some point they were trying to demarcate the border. And when we are talking about sharing water, the best customary law, international customary law, demands that actually when you have water body like this and you're sharing with another state, we use what we call equidistance, approach to delimitation or border marking. That basically means that we look for the middle point, and then from your shores to the other shores, you divide by two and you take half of it and the other half of it. And the government of Uganda was cognizant of that much earlier. That's why we signed an agreement with Congo in 1990 for that cooperation. But at the end of the day, someone wants to ask, we are at the border. You may ask, how about if we discover tomorrow, that our oil actually extends to the Congo? I first of all want to give you comfort that actually the source rock I talked about, our seismic data that we have acquired right now, shows that we are tilted. We have a tilted block here in Kingfisher that is tilted something like this. It's tilted more, it's deep towards the Congo side, and it's elevated towards the Ugandan side. What that means is that with the concept of buoyancy, oil will always flow upwards as a result of something known as buoyancy. And because of buoyancy, it is always known that oil is less dense than water. So it means that oil will be floating on top of water. Because oil floats on top of water, you will always have a tendency of having a pool with water below and gas on top. Okay? And what happens to that? So when you have a source rock which is tilted and it is down south, it's down deep, it means that the migration will always be going towards the up deep of that structure. So generally speaking, one would say because the organic matter is cooked in the source rock, that should be the kitchen. And so if the oil pool is being produced up deep of that structure, then you can, by analogy, you could say that the oil is being cooked in the kitchen and the dining hall is in Uganda. And you will guess where the kitchen would be. So that's the first comfort. The second comfort is, should we then find that actually we have oil across the border of Uganda and Congo, we do what we call international unitization. Because we already have an agreement with Congo, it means that we can have an international unitization. And international unitization can take three components. You can decide an authority like ours, like the Petroleum Authority, to manage that resource on behalf of the two states. The second one, you can decide and say that one of the states operate and manage the resources, and then the other state gets a fair share of their part. You can as well decide that you have both states actually managing jointly. At the end of the day, which model works for such kind of international unitization is a subject of negotiation between the two states. And so that is something that we are cognizant of, and most often than not, people ask us that, assuming we are right now at the border, because the border is not far from here, if we find that this oil actually reaches Congo, what do we do? That's how we would be able to manage it. So in a nutshell, that is what is happening in this place, and I would be glad to answer certain specific questions as far as the project is concerned before I invite my colleagues, CNOOC, to come and tell us more about especially how they are working with the community, and then we shall be able to go and see some of the projects that they have done in the community, like the water treatment here for the community and some of the livelihood restoration programs that they have, and how the community is coexisting with this project. So those are, in a nutshell, what you need to know about the Kingfisher project. Like I mentioned earlier on, Kingfisher will be producing at 40,000 barrels per day. And at 40,000 barrels per day, we expect to produce for about four years, and then we start going down, the production will come down. But that production will be supported by the Kaiso-Tonya fields that are meant to come at least 4 or 5 years after first oil. And the Kaiso-Tonya fields include Mputa, includes Nzizi, and includes Waraga. All those have production license currently, and those will be used to support the production at Kingfisher. The central processing facility is a facility that is used to try and improve the quality of our crude oil. Now, it's important for you to understand that when we produce crude oil, we produce them with a lot of impurities. When we produce, we do not necessarily want water, but water will always come out with oil. We do not necessarily need gas in our oil. So we want to reduce the amount of gas as much as possible, separate it basically. We also want to remove things like rock cuttings and fragments and so on that come from the subsurface. Now, you have always had things, terms like Brent crude in the North Sea, West Texas Index in the Gulf of Mexico, the Nigerian light, and so on and so forth. All those are blends of crudes that are improved. They are improved. Why? Because the properties allow them to be sold as a lump sum. It means that if, for example, Uganda wants to sell its crude in the international market, and in a particular market, maybe in the Middle East, maybe in Europe, they must be able to bring up their crude, improve that property of the crude to the state that the international community can be able to buy. So it's the same thing let me give an example. If you're going to sell your tomatoes in market in Nakasero, and then they say for each tomato you bring, it must be at least 200 grams. Of course, in the garden you have tomatoes of 250, 25, 550 grams. So you have to make sure that you sieve that tomato to 200 grams for you to be able to sell at Nakasero market. It's the same thing here. Crude oils come from, much as they all come from organic matter, they are not of the same property. Some of them have very high sulfur content. You want to remove that completely because they are corrosive to our pipelines and so on. So the more, for example, you have sulfur content, that is an impurity in the oil industry term, you get very low price for crude in the international market. But what the central processing facility does is to remove all those impurities that we do not want and make our crude better and a better quality for us to be able to sell in the international market. That's the objective of the central processing facility. It is different from the refinery. The refinery now takes the crude which we have processed from here, and we have removed all the impurities and breaks it down to useful products. Those products that they are always called white products, the petrol, the diesel, the kerosene, the jet fuel, those are the useful products that the refinery does. So that is not done at the central processing facility. The central processing facility is to improve the quality of the crude, remove all the impurities that we don't work, reduce the amount of water, and send a better quality crude to the refinery. Of course, even when it goes to the pipeline, that pipeline is going to load on a vessel somewhere in the Indian Ocean and transport it to a refinery somewhere in Europe, Middle East, or elsewhere. That's what happens. As far as we are aware right now, we do not have any claims from Congo as far as this project is concerned, because there is no evidence right now that our resources actually cross the border. If that happens, we have a mechanism through which we shall be able to develop our field, and those three mechanisms I've mentioned are options that we have at the table. It's always at the discretion of the countries to negotiate and find what is best for us to be able to employ. It is in the law that before any production license is awarded, the company must submit what we call a field development plan. That field development plan includes a component of decommissioning. But also, in the law, it is required that after a certain period of time, when we start production, the companies must start depositing money for decommissioning. Remember, decommissioning is one of those expenditures that no company wants. That is why most of the big companies around the world, when they start production and they reach a certain stage and they realize that the economics of the projects have gone down, they tend to sell off to smaller companies. Why? Because they want to transfer the obligation of decommissioning to another company. And governments have become much more stricter these days and much more clever and say, okay, in fact, for example, in the UK, if you're a company that is operating in the North Sea, even if you sell off your interest to another company, you will still remain with that obligation of decommissioning. It means that if I sell company A, sell to company B, when government is looking for decommissioning money and is looking for an obligation to take somebody to book for decommissioning, you A, much as you have sold to B, you're still liable for that decommissioning to happen. So governments have over time have become more clever and try to learn from the industry to ensure that we cover our backs. Because someone can come, put up this facility, mess up these multi-million tons of steel that is going to be put here as pipeline, as central processing facility. If there is no oil here, it's useless. Much as somebody will say, we'll take it to the mill and probably get steel out of it and create other things. But as far as the oil industry terms is concerned, it's useless. Because you have to removing it, the cost of removing it, the cost of transportation and taking it all the way, you cannot get that back useless. So somebody needs to take that obligation, and companies don't like spending money at the tail end, but it's an obligation they must take. So as Uganda, we have taken care of that. It's a threat that we saw recently, and one of the things that we have done during the study of placement of this facility is to study how many meters does the lake needs to rise in order to be able to affect this. Indeed, when the flooding took place, this is pad 1. We are going to reach there. It's near the permanent camp. So what you see there is the permanent camp. That is pad 1. That is pad 2. Pad 3 is there, where you see, and then pad 4 is a bit up north. So when it flooded, and then there's a water obstruction also around there. So when it flooded, it actually affected a little bit of that side. And flooding is a natural, it's a natural process. None of us can stand against flooding. However, we have to mitigate it. Now, our facilities have been put, I don't know, I don't want to give, Andrew, do you know how far the CPF is from the water, from the shoreline?
I'm not sure, but the flooding doesn't reach the CPF.
It doesn't reach the CPF. It has never reached the CPF. It can't reach the CPF. But I want to tell you that we have put mitigation factor. The lake will need to rise, I think, more than 10 meters or so for it to actually affect the CPF. And that is quite a big amount of water for it to be able to flood. That would probably mean it's flooding the whole of CPF. But 10 meters is, with the reservoir of the Albertine Graben, is quite some flooding. It has never happened before in the last few years, decades history. So there's that we have taken care of, except the facility like the water obstruction facility that has to touch the lake actually, because we are getting the water for the production and for treatment and the production from the lake. So that is the one that possibly might be affected. But it's something that we pray doesn't happen, but we have put mitigation factors to try and avoid that. It has a noise cancelling mechanism. That's the state-of-the-art rig. And I allow Prosi to again talk about it. You will not hear sound even when we go there. You won't hear, but it is drilling. It's active. I don't know what they're doing right now, but we'll find out. Prosi will tell us. But that rig has a noise cancellation mechanism, so it will you will never hear it because we have planned for it because of this area. Prosi.
They asked you about the answering this question.
Yeah?
Yes, about
yes.
The breeding of the fish and the waves and the breeding is going to be answered by CNOOC.
Okay. Yes, the breeding will be answered by CNOOC.